Newsfirst Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali.
And a very good evening to you and a warm welcome to Newsline Live. My guest this evening is Mr. Srinath Perera, President Counsel Srinath Perera, former Additional Solicitor General. He's right here with us to answer our questions and help throw some light on troubling matters. Mr. Srinath Perera, very good evening to you and welcome to Newsline Live.
Good evening to you, Faraz, and thank you very much for inviting me.
It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you. The pleasure, I think, is all ours, really. Now then, there is a genuine and protracted concern that the people's rights are suffering from erosion. What do you have to say about that?
I cannot say anything other than agree with what you have said. It started with the amendment of the Constitution. That is the 20th Amendment. In my view, as a result, the little bit of independence that public servants had has been totally destroyed, because now those in the public service who want to get into positions, that all depends on the decision of a single person. All independent commissions have been done away with, and if you displease that one person, you can be 100% sure that you will not get your whatever that is due to you as a public servant. Then, very unfortunately, that one person who makes that decision is a politician. He is not an independent person who has come from the skies. He is a politician, and therefore a person who would want to make political decisions as and when the necessity arises. So in those circumstances, public servants who hold high positions are now totally at the mercy of a single individual, and as a result, the little bit of independence that the public servant had has been destroyed. And as a result, I think we are running into a form of chaotic, I do not like to use this term, a sort of a dictatorial situation.
So, and this one person is obviously the president of the country.
Of course, yes.
Who is an elected official.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
But he's elected because of the way the system works. He's elected along party lines, because you have to be a member of a party before you can become the president of our country.
Absolutely.
And as a result of all this, this is being brought into sharp focus when a group of people were protesting about something or other, and the police arrested them and produced them before a magistrate who gave them bail.
Absolutely.
And only for these people to come out and get sort of manhandled and bundled into police vans and sent off to a quarantine center. That sort of smacks of arbitrariness on the part of the police.
Absolutely. And can I say this? I think I went public on this issue on the very next date, and I indicated that what they had done was absolutely legal, with no right whatsoever to do what they did, for the reason that the police, for instance, if I violate the regulations that have been made under the Quarantine Act, certainly the police officers have a right to arrest me and take me before a magistrate. Now, let us assume, without conceding, let us assume that they had reason to suspect. Now, we all saw those protesters were following all the guidelines that have been put down, or the regulations that have been laid down by the DGHS, who is the proper authority to lay down those guidelines. That is, they were having the distances at 1 meter, and they were all wearing masks, face masks. Notwithstanding that, let us assume that they had reason to suspect that one or more of those persons had violated the regulations. They had every right. Quarantine Act.
Right.
They had every right to take them into custody and produce before the magistrate, which they did.
Right.
And the honourable magistrate had made order granting bail to those persons. I think from the information that I have, subject to correction, I say this, I also have information to say that the police officers had asked for an order to send these people for quarantine, and the Honorable Magistrate had refused to do so. Even if I am wrong on that, the fact is that there is no order made by court directing that these individuals be taken in for quarantine, and I might say, in my view, no judicial officer has the power, unless they have been given the power under the provisions contained in the particular act. They have no right to deal with this quarantine process. The magistrate's jurisdiction is in relation to criminal matters. If not quasi-criminal matters, where by statute, by law, they have been empowered to inquire into and make decisions. Now, sending a person for quarantine is not a criminal matter. So, therefore, it is outside the jurisdiction of a magistrate. And therefore, a magistrate does not, in my view, does not have the power to direct the police or any other person to take any person for quarantine or not. That's outside his purview.
Can I stop you there and ask you one question? What happens where the Director General of Health and or a representative of his, like a PHI or whoever, orders somebody to go to quarantine, and that person refuses and flatly says no? What happens then? What happens then?
No, there are health workers, certain categories, who are empowered to decide whether a person should be taken in for quarantine or not. Now, if that is done and if you refuse, maybe it amounts to a violation of another regulation, for which he can be dealt with through courts. Now, in this case, what happened was there was no order made by court, and I know for sure, I'm 100% certain that there were no health workers empowered to make that decision.
Present at the time?
At the time. At the time. Because don't forget, for the health worker also who is empowered to make that decision, he must examine, he must have good reason to come to a conclusion that such person ought to be sent for quarantine. There must be some good reason. He also can't arbitrarily make that decision.
He can't just look at your face.
Absolutely.
So he needs to subject them to some form of test.
Absolutely. But as far as, and in any event, a police officer has no expertise whatsoever to make that decision. So that being the case, when they decided to bundle them up, we saw how they were being bundled up. There were females who were being dragged by male police officers. Uncivilized, even in an uncivilized system, even in an uncivilized society, I don't think that sort of thing will happen. Then we also saw that lady, that old lady, being carried by 4 persons as if though they were carrying the dead body of a dog or an animal. I mean, I think that was absolutely uncivilized, but be that as may. Now, they order that these people be taken, they are taken on whose power? Who has given them the power? Who has given them the power? Obviously, judging from what the Honorable Minister who is in charge of the police, the statements that were made, he is behind. I get the feeling that he is with his authority or connivance. I get the feeling that this was done by the police. Now, obviously what the government was trying to do is they see that there is mounting protests coming from right through the country, and obviously they wanted to suppress it. And they probably thought, once these people are bundled up and taken to a place like Mullaitivu for 2 weeks, that will be a disincentive for the others to come forward, and that they will be able to control the whole thing thereby with this. But very unfortunately for the government, I think the government, whoever who is advising the rulers, obviously lost sight of the fact that in this country there are bold, courageous, honorable people who, instead of getting discouraged and taking 3 steps backwards, they got together, and I think that snowballed. Now, immediately the next day also we saw such protests being carried out in the streets, and probably realizing that things were no good, the police officers or the IGP or whoever probably took 3 steps backwards, and we find that they have stopped that. But very unfortunate. I might, if you permit me,
please,
I will also refer to a letter dated 6th of July 2021.
Yes.
That is 2 days prior to the date on which this incident occurred, sent by the police media to media personnel.
Right.
Where they quote an extract from a letter which is said to have been sent to them by the DGHS, who is the competent authority.
Right.
If you permit me, it says, what it says in English is the quotation, or whatever that is said to have been
purported to come from
the DGHS, says that there is a great risk of the spread of COVID by activities such as public meetings and protests, in which larger sections of the public will get together, and saying that that should not be allowed. Now, to start with, I am surprised that the Director General of Health has made a statement of this nature. Who on earth is he? The Constitution of this country gives the power, freedom, the right to the people, the freedom of expression, the freedom to oppose, the freedom of assembly, all that. As long as the persons who take part in that comply with the regulations or the guidelines that have been laid down by the DGHS,
which needs to be gazetted.
Which I was just going to come to that, but before that, right? Who on earth is he to tell the police, look here, protests can't take place. As long as the guidelines are being followed, that's it. That's it. I mean, the Constitution gives certain constitutional guarantees to the citizens of this country. Who on earth is the Director General of Health Services? I'm sorry to say this. I mean, the Director General of Health Services, as a person, is a very nice individual. That's a different matter. But when it comes to official dealings, who on earth is he to make a direction like this? That's one. Secondly, as you quite rightly pointed out, this, assuming that he made this ruling, this has not been gazetted. So unless and until that is gazetted, you can't give effect to it.
Right.
And thirdly, I say, as I mentioned, we went through the 20th Amendment, which broke the backbone of the public servant. Independence of the public servant was destroyed. That is clearly demonstrated by this letter. We find, I don't think the Director General of Health Services left to himself would write will make a foolish statement of this nature. I'm sorry to say this. Which in fact could well be ultra vires. Ultra vires. And obviously this is being written by him under pressure. Why? Now, for his own survival. As I told you, public servants, unless they comply with the political power, the political authority, their existence will be in question. So,
on that note, President's Counsel Srinath Perera, let's go for a short break and let's take a peek at the headlines for this evening's primetime news from News First.
News First Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali. News First Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali.
And welcome back to Newsline Live. I'm in conversation with President's Counsel Srinath Perera.
Faraz, will you give me permission to mention one more,
yes,
more issue? That is, let us look at the other side of the coin. let us assume that the police officers in good faith to protect the people thought, well, look here, these people have been together, so there would have been a possibility of the virus or whatever spreading, and therefore to protect the others, we send them for quarantine. Right, fine.
Reasonable.
Fine. Forget about the law. Factually, let's look at it. Then we also, the police officers also intermingling with the same crowd. Now, am I to assume that the virus is very selective in going from person to person in the transmission? Is it that the virus, when he sees the khaki uniform, keeps away from that, like what we do? If that be the case, if they were so concerned about the well-being of the citizens, then in my view, together with those 31 persons who were sent to Mullaitivu, I think all the police officers who were there ought to have gone. What on earth? What on earth are these people doing? What on earth are these people doing? I must also place on record that, as I told you, the government probably thought that the moment you do that, all the others will stop the agitations. I think, never mind to which party or political color they belong to, I salute all those people who boldly and courageously took to the streets without any fear. Never mind to which party or political color that they belong to. They are the greatest people of this country who have fought to protect the freedom, the rights that have been given to the people of this country under a democratic system. If they gave in at that point, we would have been finished.
Are they as...
I think I'm going outside my limits.
No.
Please pardon me.
Are they as much freedom fighters as are freedom fighters from the past who fought for independence and so on?
For us, pardon me for saying this, I don't think we ever fought for... I believe you're referring to freedom, getting our freedom in 1948.
From our colonial masters.
As I see it, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think Sri Lankans ever had to fight to get their freedom.
Right.
The Britishers, the rulers, decided to grant freedom to India, and once they did that, probably they thought, what is the big great idea in holding on to a small country like Sri Lanka? One of the two reasons I see why we are in this mess is because, one, we got our freedom on a platter without a fight.
Okay.
Secondly, we have a fantastic weather condition system, environment. If we had a environment where at least for 4 or 5 months we had a temperature going below 0 degrees, where we had to
be tougher.
Yes, right? Then we would have realized that we cannot play the fool with what we do, because that would have resulted in our having to die of starvation. This blessing that has been given to us, I think, is one of the causes why we are taking things easy and ruining ourselves.
Thank you very much for your questions by SMS on 0772 300 305. Why are the authorities sticking to their guns and still not releasing the people in quarantine? And I wonder, for how long more will they be held?
I believe two reasons. One, if they do release them, they are making an admission that what they did was wrong.
But so if you're into mature governance and you have a thumping majority and you have a virtual 2/3 in Parliament, surely these are minor matters that won't...
2/3 Parliament majority is yes, but maturity, as regards political maturity, I have a serious question. And I might place on record for us that at least 3 people who are known to me who are in Mullaitivu, they were tested, the PCRs were done on them, and it has been found that it is negative. I don't know about the 31 persons, but at least 3 of them, whom I know, the tests were done and it has been reported that they are negative. Now, if that be the case, as you quite correctly asked me, why are they holding on to them?
Yeah, why are they holding
I don't know. I think they want to still know, having lost in the first round,
Yeah.
now I suppose they don't want to give in. They want to at least try to show that they were right in what they did and they are pursuing it. I think, as you quite correctly said, if the rulers are mature, they wouldn't make that mistake. Not only the rulers, I think even the persons who are probably advising the rulers may not be as mature as they ought to be.
Or they are, at best, if they are advisors, at best they are incompetent because
Absolutely,
they haven't read their notes.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Because you can't expect the rulers to read every single nuance, and which is why they have advisors.
Absolutely.
And
you're dead right.
And they ought to be sacked forthwith. Just as much as we asked for Arjuna Mahendran to be removed as the governor of the central bank so that there could be a robust and proper investigation, these advisors who are misadvising and ill-advising the president and the various ministers, they ought to be summarily dismissed and sent home.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Now then,
they are being paid out of public funds for giving wrong advice.
Well, that's ridiculous. If you were in a private mercantile environment, you'd be sent home anyway.
Absolutely.
Now then, can I ask you, what is the fate of Mr. Stalin then?
I don't want to, Farhad, I don't want to mention anything because we are proposing to file a fundamental rights application. Probably it will be filed tomorrow. So therefore, very likely I'll get involved.
Right.
In that background, I don't want to make any comments. But all what I can say is, as far as I'm concerned, I think he is being held in illegal custody. His fundamental rights are being violated, and that's it.
What is the, as far as your information goes, is the Minister of Justice, Mr. Ali Sabri, involved in this decision for the police to send off people to the quarantine centres?
Farhad, I don't know whether he was involved or not, but
what would the role of the Justice Minister be in this?
I don't know whether he was involved in the decision making, but at least after the incident, he ought to have indicated or advised them that Sena Council should prevail. I think he ought to have advised them that what they did was wrong. But we do not know whether in fact he did advise. But some of those others to whom the advice was given were very stubborn, and whether they were not willing to give in, I don't know. But certainly as the Minister of Justice, if he felt that what has been done is irregular, illegal and unlawful, then he ought to have advised the others who are concerned to put things right. And we all make mistakes.
Yes.
We all make mistakes.
Yes, I'm sure.
But once you make the mistake, at least when you realize that you have made a mistake, you have to try and put it right.
You need to be man enough to admit it.
Absolutely.
Why do the top brass in government go out of their way to attract such damaging publicity? And may I add, why is it that this government seems to be going down this treacherous route when they do know jolly well that this upsets the our international partners, and they all raise concerns, and in the case of the GSP Plus, we may even lose it because of all this?
I myself can't understand why they are doing it, why they are violating all these rules and regulations, why they are taking steps which are anti-democratic. All what I can say is the people in good faith gave a 2/3 majority to them. The laws which are in operation in this country for a good ruler and a set of good rulers are sufficient to bring about an efficient system and progress from there onwards. I don't think they need any additional muscle to suppress people's movements. But very unfortunately, I cannot think of what the reasons are. But very unfortunately, the government seems to be taking the wrong path. They ought to know that if they set this type of trend, can I say this? As much as there are a few good things that late Mr. J.R. Jayawardena did, he also probably at one stage thought that he and his United National Party will be in power forever and forever.
But that appears to be what this party thinks now.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and more questions coming on, and this one is again about our Justice Minister. As a straight bat, shouldn't Mr. Ali Sabri, our Justice Minister, come in and correct the situation?
Well, I don't think he himself could do it, because if it's a decision made by, after all, police comes under the Minister in charge of police. So I don't think Mr. Ali Sabri has direct access to acts done by the police. All what he could do probably is advise the concerned minister and the other authorities to correct themselves. I'm looking at it from an independent point of view.
Yeah.
But it is for the minister in charge who ought to have corrected it, but from what that is being, the subsequent steps that were being taken by the Honourable Minister concerned, I get the feeling that he either doesn't understand what he's talking about, I'm referring to the Minister in charge of the police, or else he is not bothered at all about what others think.
There's a song which is quite famous. It says the title is "Stuck on You." It looks like the Republic is stuck for the next 3.5 years. So, what do you see?
Can I let's hope and pray.
Yeah.
Maybe they have made mistakes during the last 1.5 years or so. Let's hope and pray. At least now they will realize their folly and try to make amends and come back to the rails.
Hope springs eternal.
Absolutely.
President Council Srinath Perera, thank you very much for being on Newsline Live. It's now time, of course, to join the wonderful crew who make up the primetime news for News First at 9 o'clock. In the meantime, take care. Thank you very much. And tomorrow will be a recording, but we'll be back on Monday for the live program. Take care and God bless you.
Thank you very much.